All right, we're back. So hopefully you've had a chance to kind of absorb that model, right? Because again, if God, this looks terrible. Um, if you don't understand kind of the basics of what's going on here, in terms of the fact that we're just, for this one at least, using a base case basically, meaning we're not going to change anything, right? And we saw that if we do that, the share price ends up pretty low down here at 22.79. And so the question now becomes, well, what if we change things? And when I say things, I mean the operating plan. And so that's our next topic. All right, so it says evaluating strategic initiatives is our next topic. So different operating plans is what we're talking about. And the starting point is, of course, just the fact that we had that status quo kind of base case, right, where we were just saying that, look, 2018 is just going to keep repeating. And so, the goal, or the job, I should say, the responsibility of managers is to come up with different plans to improve the firm, right, to maximize the value of the firm. That's their job. And so by doing this type of analysis, we should be able to see kind of an expected kind of cost-benefit analysis of, what would it cost us to implement these plans, and would it give us enough of a benefit to make this the best plan for the firm? Again, with a fair warning, these are all projections. These are all estimates, which is a nice word for guessing. Hopefully educated guesses. That's all we're doing, right? So what this firm did is they came up with not only their base case, their status quo, but 3 different strategic initiatives that the firm could pursue in order to try to improve the intrinsic value the value of the firm, and then the intrinsic value to the shareholders. And so I'm not going to go through the whole story of like what the book does about, they went talk to their marketing managers and they said this, and they went talk to their R&D guys and they said this. If you really want the narrative, you can go read it. I mean, this is where it gets difficult teaching this type of material, when it becomes so like firm dependent or like story specific to a narrative. We don't know anything about this firm. Even if we were analyzing a real firm, we don't know anything about the inner operations of Apple enough to sit there and actually be able to analyze how, their costs of goods sold as a percent of sales, how their inventory as a percent of sales would change under these different plans. And so this is when we just have to kind of go into what I used to call them when I used to teach econ, fake econ world, right? Where we're like, hey, we know this doesn't happen in real life, but let's pretend. And so that's why I always struggle with this. There's no way for us to be experts enough on this, first of all, fictitious firm, to be able to come up with the numbers on our own, but we can still look at the impact of the numbers and understand what we would do if we had that insider knowledge, right? But let's face it, we don't. Anyways, the 3 plans they came up with. Plan, which is actually so this is number 1, status quo. Number 2 was a plan that focused on having revenue growth. And so for that one, basically, it's going to cost $110 million. You don't need to memorize that. And of course, the goal here is just to boost sales growth. Is boost 2 O's or 1? Who cares? All right. And so that's going to be down here in column D. So put a D there. This was column C. The second strategic initiative, which is actually the 3rd overall plan, just came up with the idea of improving operations, just becoming, more efficient, Not necessarily having higher sales growth, just doing a better job of what we're already doing. That one was going to cost $165 million to implement. That's in column E. And then in column F, they're like, well, let's combine those two things and let's pursue both at the same time. So let's do a combination of D plus E. Let's try to boost sales growth and improve operations at the same time. Oh, but guess what? It's super expensive. It's $275 million. Now, each plan is going to change some of the inputs, and the inputs the plan changes are these cells that are highlighted in, as long as you're not colorblind, in red. All right, so you can see the sales growth kind of only affects those first four variables. The operations focuses on the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then when we combine the two, of course, it affects all the inputs. Also notice that now our cost of strategic initiatives used to be 0 across the board, like it is right here in column C. But now we see that 110, that 165, and that 275. Okay? So you can actually go back into the actual Excel sheet. You can change those inputs in one of the very first tables. And then when you change those inputs, you should get the numbers that are now located in panel B. Right? And so they basically input all these numbers in, right? And then recorded down these certain values as the output for each scenario. And the two main or three, four main things I want to focus on is this line right here. And then we can look at the value of operations, which is the value of the entire firm, and then the intrinsic stock price. And so we can kind of start seeing that there's definitely a difference in the operating plans, right? Under 1 and 2, ROIC is only 9.84, and then it jumps up to 13.5 once we improve our operations, which kind of makes sense, right? Because we're becoming more efficient. And so, we're going to become more profitable when we become more efficient. So it makes sense that when I focus on operations, the ROIC jumps. Other things to note is that notice the value of my operations actually goes down when I compare the base case to the higher sales growth only. So it's like if we just focus on growth in this firm, but we don't get any better, then we actually hurt the value of the firm. We go from 22.79 to 21.48 per share. And again, it's because they're not actually improving operations. They're just like, oh, let's sell more, but let's not get better at selling. Not a very smart idea. But when we, and remember the WACC was, oh God, I don't remember what the WACC was. Oh, let's go see if we can find it. Target WACC was, let's call it 11%. So if the WACC is 11%, the reason why the value actually goes down, or definitely doesn't improve, is, well, my ROIC still sucks. And I'm spending money to implement this. So I'm spending money to have growth in sales, but because I'm not getting more efficient, my ROIC doesn't actually change. So that's a pretty terrible idea, obviously. And again, the reason why ROIC didn't change, but the firm value actually went down, it's because I spent money to not improve anything. Yeah. Plan 2 sucks. But once I start focusing on operations In the third and the fourth plan, notice that now ROIC goes up. And not only does it go up, but now ROIC is greater than WACC. And that is, again, one of our decision kind of criteria that we saw in chapter 6, right? That whenever ROIC, which is my return, is greater than my costs, happy face. Whenever ROIC is less than the cost, sad face, sad panda. Right? It's common sense. Like, you can explain that, I think, to any kind of functional person, that, hey, if your return is greater than their cost, is that good or bad? They would say good. And if your return is less than your cost, they would say bad. Right? It's kind of common sense there. And so now that we kind of have some idea of what we're looking at here in terms of which case is going to be, completely like, don't do that, and which one's going to be possibly an improvement to the firm, we would definitely want to look at the fact that we have to improve operations. Just improving sales alone for this firm is not going to cut it. Operations must be made better. And so we'll look at the actual decision they end up making. But first, we got to talk about making some financial statements, which will probably be our last video of the night. I don't even know if I really want to start this, just because I'm sure this video is already 10 minutes. That means we're already at 70 minutes for today. I'll see. I'll upload this video and then I'll see what I'll do. If not, we'll definitely won't finish this chapter today. And so Tuesday will be spent finishing up this chapter. We're almost done with all these Excel tables. And then we'll move into, we'll do the easy part of capital budgeting tomorrow. So that will be, let's just call that the plan. I know a lot of you guys are still working on your ratios anyway. Like the last time I checked, like I mentioned in the group me, no one scored a 10 yet. And people are starting to get, like, it's different things that people are getting wrong. And so I would say just be happy that wasn't given to you in a timed testing environment. Ratios are, a lot of students struggle with them. So let's just say we'll pick up with projecting financial statements tomorrow, because it's kind of an extensive process, as you see here. We'll look at that. We'll look at their selection of like what decision was actually made to choose a plan. We'll look at what they call the CFO model. We'll look at something called AFN, additional funds needed. That's where you'll actually have some problems to work for, like, on the exam. We'll look at something called self-supporting growth rate, and that will finish us up for the chapter. And then we'll move on to what I consider much easier stuff in chapters. Was it 12 and 13, I think I said? Yeah. So last video for Monday.